Hello everyone and welcome to another live Unity training. My name is Mike Geig and welcome to day 2, part 2 of Merry Fragmas 3.0. So how's everyone going? How's everyone doing? Hopefully well. We're going to go ahead and get started here. Since we want to get kind of right to it, we ran a little bit over yesterday, so we're going to go a little bit faster today. Before I start, though, as always, I do want to say if you have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever, feel free to follow us, message us on Twitter at Unity3D, at the Ant Ranch, at Matt Mirafish, at Will Goldstone, and at Mike Geig, which is me. Alrighty. So, where we left off yesterday is we have our suave-looking capsule player here, and the player is able to shoot and die and respawn on the network, which is great, and that's kind of where we left off. So today what we're going to do is we're going to tackle some graphical issues. We're going to talk about UI, we're going to talk about the fact that this character is just a lump capsule, whatever. And then after we handle some graphical stuff, then tomorrow we're going to get back to logic and some more features. We're going to be doing a cool lobby and some cool features like bots and transmitting player names and colors and all that stuff. So we're going to kind of handle the foundation of the graphics today, though. Hello, everyone who just said hi to me on Twitch. Okay. Let's see here. You know what? We started off with a question that's actually a pretty good one, so I'm just going to address it right now. Someone asked, should we avoid using our own classes as parameters on functions when doing multiplayer? I would not say no to that. Certainly you can use your own classes, your own data. You want to make sure of a couple things, though. First, you want to make sure whatever you're using is serializable, which is always a good thing. You always want to make sure, too, that you're not sending more data than you need to send, because if you're transmitting too much data, obviously that's going to bog your network down. So you want to be really careful about what you send here and what you don't. But anyway, so let's get to it. So the first thing I want to do here is I want to create a UI, because as it stands right now, actually, you know what, I'll just do a quick build, and then we can see exactly where we left off here. So right now, when you're hit, you don't really know about it. If you kill someone, you don't really know about it, and you know when you die, it's kind of jarring. There's not really a lot going on there, and so I'm gonna go ahead and I've tried something nifty here. Let's try this. I've created a special picture-in-picture overlay, so I don't have to keep moving the game window there. So I'll host the game here. I'll set up a client here. The client will approach the server. I've shot the server, but the server player doesn't know. Now they've died, but they don't really know what's going on. I don't know that I've defeated them, and then then they're back and whatever. So it's not the best of scenarios though there, and so we're gonna go ahead and fix that. And so what I'm going to do is, first off, I'm going to go ahead and prepare some pieces here that's going to be very useful later. So I'm going to go ahead and on my player, I'm going to go to the capsule here, and I'm going to disable this just so it's easier to see kind of what's happening underneath. And since our first person, our local player, doesn't need that capsule, that's purely a remote thing, I'm going to go ahead and add that as my first remote toggle. You'll remember yesterday we have shared toggles, local toggles, and remote toggles. And so this capsule is really only something that remote players need, right? The local player doesn't need to be able to see themselves. So there we go. So that's going to toggle that capsule. And also on the candy cane here, the candy cane has a bit of an odd rotation that's going to cause it to sort of be a little interesting with some of the other I'm in global data, that's why those axes aren't updating. That'll cause it to behave a little weird when we're trying to rotate it. We're going to have to do a bunch of extra math to make it line up correctly. So I'm going to fix that by just right-clicking on the candy cane. I'm going to create an empty game object, which I'm going to call gun pivot. By doing that, it's going to be centered on the candy cane's pivot automatically. And now I'm going to pull it off of the candy cane, so it's just underneath player. And I'm going to remove its rotation. And then I'm just going to nest the candy cane on it, which is going to say I'm breaking the prefab. That's fine. That's just a quick switcheroo there to get it to line up, but now it has the same rotation, which is basically the identity 000, as the player. And so rotation math in the future, when we get to that, it's going to be a lot easier. So I just wanted to do that now. And I'll hit apply. That'll save all those changes there. So that's going to be useful, that gun pivot, and then having the capsule hidden is going to make it easier to see things as well. All right. And so when I defeat a player, All right, so if I defeat a remote player, obviously I won't be defeating myself, their capsule will disappear, but I also want their gun to disappear. And I don't want just the remote player's gun to disappear, because if I'm defeated, my gun should disappear as well, right? To me, I shouldn't be able to continue seeing my gun. And so I'm going to add that to my shared toggle here. So I'm just going to drag the gun pivot on there. And then I'm going to say game object set active. So that'll toggle that on and off. All right. And again, I'll hit apply. So now when I defeat an enemy, their mesh will disappear right away, and that'll be good. So now what I'm going to do is I have created already a UI, all right, because this is nothing network related. So I'm just going to click and drag the prefab into my scene here, and I'm going to talk about it real quick because it's got a lot of stuff on it, but none of it's really network related. So I have this player canvas. It's going to have a reticule. It's just going to be right in the front. It's a giant overlay canvas, but since you always kind of have your reticule right in front of you, since it's a first-person game, not like a third-person over the shoulder or anything, that reticule is just going to be right in the center of your screen. So that's pretty much what you want. I also have this texture called Damage Flash. And on Damage Flash, I have this script, and again, I'll give you guys these scripts here, just called UI Fader. And what UI Fader does is it has a function called Flash, which makes this appear and then disappear, right? So it just flashes, oh, you've been hurt. I have a game status text, and this might help if I just go into 2D mode here and zoom out. Game status text, so there's my reticule, there's my Damage Flash. This will just tell me like, you won, you died, whatever, just big text right here. I also have health info, which is just a health label with a value. Kills info, again, label value. Log text is a section I've created on here in case I want to log any debug information. And the way it's set up is it'll write to that text there for amount of time you specify, and then it'll disappear. I also have an audio source for some background music and some audio for what happens when you die, the sound you hear when you die. Okay. Sorry, just reading chat here. There's a lot going on. Let's see. One question, how long will I need to understand C#? Well, that varies for everyone, but the advice I can give you there is don't try to understand C#. Don't try to learn programming as a goal. Instead, figure out what you want to do with programming and use programming as the road to get there. You'll never reach it if the goal is the road, right? Focus on the goal and let programming be the road. Anyway, I'm getting all philosophical there. So this is our canvas, and I do also want to mention that I've got this player canvas script. Again, I'm going to share all this stuff. The player canvas script is just a series of methods and variables that are going to be useful, right? So I've got, first off, public static player canvas. It is a singleton. I know how some of you feel about that, but it is a singleton. It's going to make it so that all of my scripts can just reference the canvas without needing to find references to it, which is important because the canvas, singletons are super useful in multiplayer scenes because the players, when they're generated, are generated not in this scene, really, especially when we get to a lobby. They're kind of generated out in the void and then brought into this scene. And as such, if inside their awake method or whatever I try to find this canvas, I won't be able to find it. It doesn't exist yet. And so it becomes important to have a way to find stuff after the fact. All right. So yeah. And so then I have these serialized fields for my reticule, the UI fader for my damage image, these text elements and the audio source. Side awake, we make sure we only have one player canvas. Now this is super useful. So, you know, normally we don't want to use GameObject.finds. They're really inefficient. They're really slow. You never want to use them in runtime code. However, if you utilize Unity's reset method, you can do all this super slow taxing code because it won't run it at runtime. Instead, that reset method, let me go to my player canvas. My reset method basically just happens whenever I put a script on something, or if I right click on the component and I say reset. And so what this is effectively doing is it's basically like if I just remove these things here, right? I can just right click reset and it refines them and there they are. And so that is a super useful thing to put in the reset method. That way I don't have to click and drag and oh, did I click and drag the wrong thing or did I miss something or whatever. So at initialize, we're just clearing out any status text. We're setting our reticule to true. We also have hide reticule, flashing the image, playing death audio, setting values for kills, writing log text. I mean, all just basic stuff there. So I'm not going to spend any time on it, which is not true because I already spent just a moment of time on it, but I don't want to spend any more. I'll be sharing the script and it'll have comments and all that stuff. All right. So that's our canvas. So now we want to use it. And so I'm going to open up my player script. Remember, that's my player's entity in networking. And we'll open this up here. All right, and now let's take a look here. Sorry, I saw someone in chat say, it's Mike Geig, and I'm thinking, where? And so I lost my train of thought. Okay, so we're inside the player script here. And so the first thing I want to do is I want to go to the area where I'm inside my disabled player. And we've got is local player. And so now, not only do we want to turn the camera on when the player dies or is disabled, but we also want to say player canvas dot hide reticule. That way our reticule isn't showing when we're not in the game. And I'm going to go down to enable player, and I'm going to do quite the inverse of that. So enable player, I'm going to say, ooh, nope, that's not right. Player canvas dot initialize. Now my initialize method clears out any game text and also shows the reticule again. And now for when we die, so here's where we're disabling the player and invoking our respawn. I'm also going to add if is local player. All right, so if we are the local player, player canvas dot write game status text, super long name there, and I'm going to say, hey, you died, haha. All right, you died. All right, and then finally, player canvas dot play death audio. All right, so then it'll play some audio. We'll know we've died. It'll say you died, and everything will make sense, and everything will be right with the world. So that is our player. And before I do a build and show you this, I'm just going to do the other ones as well. So next, I need some health. I'm going to see what happens with my health. And right now, health is basically just managed by the server. And so the players themselves don't really know what their health is. The clients have no idea what their health is and stuff like that. So we're going to fix that. We're going to make it so that this is synchronized. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just move this up because I like to keep things in a particular order here. So I like to do serialized fields. I like to do public at top, serialized fields, synchronized variables, and then just your regular run-of-the-mill local variables. And so I'm going to type sync var. That's a synced variable. All right, and sync var health, which means when this variable changes, the new value will be shared with all versions of this object. So player 1's health is reduced, all player 1's local and remote will be reduced. The one caveat there is that only the server can set the value of a sync var. All right, so if a client says, no, my health is now 4, the server's going to say, nope, it's 3, and then the client will change back to 3. And so that's fine because our server is the one that's actually modifying health, but we just need to know that that is important. It's a one-way. If we need a client to be able to update their health, it's a sync var. It's going to be require a command so that the server does it. All right, and so I got that sync var health right there, and I'm going to come down to my RPC take damage, and I'm going to say if is local player. Okay. So if I'm the local player, I also want to say player canvas dot flash damage effect, which is going to cause that the UI element to just flash really quickly. All right. So that's all well and good. All right. So we've got this sync var handling all that, but kind of the question that comes about is how do we update the UI, right? So if only the server can set the health, and the clients don't know when the health is being set, right? How do we know when to update the UI? You might think, oh, I'll just update the UI here, right? Inside the if is local player, inside the take damage. So I've obviously taken damage. Let me just update my UI. But if the server updates health, right, and then immediately says, hey, do this, it's possible that the change to health, that synchronization of health, hasn't happened yet. Right? Because there could be some lag, some delay. So you would update your UI to be the same health that already was, and then later behind the scenes it would be reduced, but you wouldn't know that. So you might have like, say 3 health, you get shot, it still says 3 health, you get shot again, all of a sudden you're at 1 health, and how did I go from 3 to 1? What happened there? So instead, we want to know exactly when that value changes, and we can. All right, we can know this. And so I'm going to go ahead, and I'm going to create a new method here. I'm going to say on health changed int value. And so what this is I'm effectively creating a callback based on something called a hook, right? And so I'm going to say, all right, you know what? Don't automatically update health when the server changes it. Instead, let me define the rules for what happens when the server gives me a new value here. So when the server gives me a new value, I'm going to say, okay, health is going to equal that value. If I don't do that, then the clients won't receive the updated value. But I'm also going to say here, if is local player. All right, this is where I'm going to set my health. Player canvas.set health, and I'm going to pass in a value, which is value. All right. So now all I need to do is tell the system, hey, when my health changes, call this method. All right. And that's easy enough to do. I'm just going to come back up to my sync var, and inside my sync var attribute here, I'm going to say hook equals, and I'm going to type in the name of that method, on health changed. Oop, there we go. So now, whenever the server updates this value, all right, it's going to, obviously do all this code, it's going to play the damage effect or whatever, but when the client receives this change, when that happens, then the client's going to say, okay, update my health and update the UI, right? So we're going to use a callback for that. It's going to be a hook. All right. Some people are getting rude in chat. I would ask you to maybe stay on topic and not be mean. It's Christmas. We're all just having fun. Yeah, and I don't want to have to enforce that. Okay, so that's our player health. Okay, and again, we'll see this all in action here in just a moment. I'm just going to get through the scripts real quick here. So, player shooting now. So we have health and we have a score, and so let's update our score. And our score is going to be kind of very similar to what we just saw. So for the score, since we don't even have a score yet, we're going to have a sync var. All right, because again, the server is going to maintain the score, but it's still good for the players to know what their score is, especially if they are the ones that need to update their UIs. So I have my score, and then underneath start here, I'm going to say void on enable, that built-in Unity method, score equals 0. All right, so when we die, our score gets reset. Eventually what we're going to do is we're going to require a player to get 5 kills in a row without dying in order to win the game, as opposed to just this endless deathmatch. And so basically every time they die, their score is going to go back to 0 and they've got to get 5 kills, right? And that's going to be part of the challenge. Now, since the server should manage the score, players shouldn't manage their own score, especially because it's a sync var. Only the server should be able to do this. So I could put like if is server in here, all right, to make sure only the server is setting that score. But better yet, I'm actually just going to say server callback, so only the server executes this on enable method, and clients don't even see it. All right, then everything in here will automatically, no matter what, only be run on the server. All right, and so we've got our score being reset here. We have our sync var score. So let's go down to command fire, where we actually shoot an enemy. And you recall that enemy health, or the player health script returns back a boolean. Did we just kill this enemy? And so far we haven't been using it yet. So let's use it now. So I'm going to go ahead and just throw this in an if block, and I will say bool was kill shot. Was this a kill shot? Equals enemy take damage. And then if was kill shot score plus plus. Oops, there we go. So if we killed the enemy, add to our score. Now, just like health, how do we know when to update the UI? If I were to say it right here in process shot effects, score may not actually be updated yet. So we're going to use a hook again. I'm going to say void on score changed int value. There we go. And I will say score equals value. And if is local player, player canvas dot canvas dot set kills, and I'll pass in value. There we go. And now we just need to tell it to use that hook. So going back to the top, sync var hook equals on score changed parentheses. All right, so a lot of code there. Let's see what all this actually does. Let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and someone in chat said, oh no, he's going to enforce Christmas. Yeah, maybe I will. All right, I don't like how you're speaking to me. No, I'm joking. That would be kind of funny. All right, so there's nothing really to do or change here. I always like to click apply. I'm especially drilling it into my head now because I forgot so much yesterday. So let's just kick off a build here. And we're also going to hear some holiday cheer because of the player canvas I just added. And let me turn on this extra window here, and we'll hit play here. And we hear our sweet audio. There we go. And, alright. And then I will join as a client. We're going to hear a bunch of extra audio. And it's always a good idea when you're testing to make sure two things. That the server can defeat the client and that the client can defeat the server. A lot of times if you only test as the server, you're like, oh yeah, I can defeat this, I can move this, oh, this is working. The server has authority. The server can do whatever it wants. Always test to make sure the clients can hurt each other and hurt the server. That's important. And so I'm going to shoot, and you can see, alright, my health has been reduced, and I flash that damage effect. And again, and Santa Claus laughs at me. Well, yeah, so someone's saying we have an echo. We do have an echo this time because I have two windows playing audio. I'm about to mute my audio. I just wanted everyone to hear that this time. And so now let's make sure my client can defeat the server. So there's 1, 2, you died. There we go. The kills should be reset. And they are. Okay, yeah, we are going to have an echo right now, and I'm going to fix that right now, actually. So what I'm going to do is, so you've heard the audio now, you get it, there's Christmas music, Santa Claus laughs at you, all that stuff. For the sake of my sanity, while doing this here, I'm just going to go to my Edit Project Settings, Audio, and I'm just going to set my global audio to 0. That means I'm just turning off all audio across the board. Just, again, for my sanity, I'm going to be running two windows. I don't want it to be playing over myself talking, and so I'm just turning audio off. Do note it's still there. I've just basically muted it, all right? So, yeah, all right. So there we go. So we have our UI. We have sort of the player disappearing when they die. We've got the health decrementing. We've got the kills incrementing. We got the damage image. Santa Claus laughs at us. We got Christmas music. It's feeling so festive in here. And so now we have our UI sort of ready to go. So another thing I like to do when dealing with development like this is in my builds, the builds that I've done, I've had this extra player, the player that I'm using just sort of to build everything, and it really doesn't need to be there. And so my builds don't need that. It's more of just a testing thing for me, right, to set things up. And I don't want to constantly have to disable it or remove it or whatever. So here's what I usually do. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new scene, and I'm going to save this scene as scenes folder. I like to name my building scenes construct, right, because, you know, the Matrix was awesome. We call it the construct. All right, so inside the construct here, I don't need a camera or a light. All right, so goodbye camera and light. I'm going to go back to my scenes folder. I'm going to go back to my main gameplay scene. And I'm also going to load in construct by just clicking, dragging it into my hierarchy. So now I've loaded two scenes simultaneously. And I'm going to move this player down to construct. So now the player is no longer in my main gameplay scene. It's only in construct, which means in my builds, player won't be there. It's just there additively for while I'm working. As a matter of fact, if I say, you know what, unload construct, player goes away. And then load construct, player's back. All right. And while I'm at it, I like to go to build settings, file, build settings. And I just like to add my main gameplay as the only part of my build, so construct doesn't squirrel its way in there. Right? So now in my builds, this extra player won't be there. It's just for prototyping and things like that. All right. So that's, you know, basically an easy way to handle that. So in chat we have a question. How about syncing particle effects? They work on the one who shot only. No, actually, so they work on both. Particle effects, so it's not worth it to synchronize particles exactly. Actually, most networking games, like if I destroy a wall, I'll see rubble, and you'll see rubble, but our rubble will rarely be the same because it doesn't matter. It's, you know, it doesn't matter how the thing crumbles as long as it crumbles. These particles will be way different on each one, but you'll never know because you're not playing with two screens, and even if you were, you would have to really scrutinize it to tell. But the effects are playing on both. So when player one shoots, player two sees player one shoot. It's how we worked it out. That's just basically part of the code with the RPCs of playing the effect. So if you pay attention, that's how that works. All right. Okay, so now basically I just like to do that. Another thing I like to do is, so my camera here has this sort of, I guess, lavender, periwinkle. I don't know, maybe lavender. Color, anyway, color for its background, and then the player camera has the default blue, which doesn't quite match. So I also like to just say, hey, you know what, let's use the same color. This color is one I just picked randomly, so those are the values, but otherwise I just picked it randomly. So now they just match, and I'll click apply there. All right. So now I've got the player in its own construct scene, which will become useful later on as well. All right. So I think we have survived the tyranny of this capsule long enough. So let's go back to my player here, and I mean, I really only had the capsule momentarily, but I'm going to bring it back now. I don't like it. Let's get rid of it. Let's add an actual mesh model here. So I'm going to right-click the capsule. Goodbye, capsule. Yes, I'm breaking the instance. That's fine. And just so we can line things up here, I'm going to turn on my character controller so we can see the wireframe. And I'm going to go down to models. And so here is where I'm going to use this sci-fi space soldier character. However, Ethan works, Teddy Bears work, Santa Claus work, whatever, just models work, right? So the things I'm doing are going to be kind of universal. So don't worry like, oh, I don't have that model specifically. Trust me, this is going to work across the board. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go down here. I'm going to find the models, spatial, soldier, meshes. I've already created a prefab that just has the materials on it because the default mesh, you have to drag the materials onto it. So that's all I've done here. And I'm going to click and drag that into my player. And I'm going to just move it to the center. And so I can see an issue here. And the issue is that the players, the models, right, center point or root is at its feet, which is pretty normal for when people model stuff. However, my character controller's center is in its center, and that causes an offset. That's really problematic. The model's sort of flying in air. I could move the model down, but that's going to make animations behave oddly, all right, because they're going to be based off of thinking they should be higher up. So instead, I'm just going to move the character controller up. Now, the numbers I'm using here are a bit magical in that I played around with it and found numbers that I liked for this model. Every model is a little bit different, but for this character controller, because all I did really is I just tested it by doing this, right, and figuring out where I liked it. I like a value of 0.85. Okay, so just 0.85 there, and then that's going to move the center of it, so that tells me that, hey, look, the root of both of them are the same, right? So we're good, and then also the height of it. All right, I'm going to reduce down a bit to just 0.16. All right, again, that's just some testing that I've done and found that it's also too wide. Right, it's going to give this character a huge hitbox, and so I'm going to reduce it down to 0.25. So mostly just the torso is what I can hit there. Plus, when the arms are down and the legs, you know, are running stuff, that'll fit pretty good. All right, we could do a more complex hitbox, but this is fine. That's exactly what I want. Now, for my capsule collider, it still thinks it's down there, so I'm going to just give it the same values. So capsule collider, your y is going to be 0.85 with a radius of 0.25 and a height of 1.6. Again, those numbers, magic numbers, will vary depending on what model you use. So now the capsule collider and the character are in the right spot, but my camera is still going to be too low. As a matter of fact, my camera probably not where we want our camera to be, all things considered. I'll leave the obvious jokes out of it. And so I'm going to want to move this up. Now, I don't want to move my camera up to 0.85 because that'll put it right at the top of its head. And then I really kind of want it to be down sort of in the visor region there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it up, say, 0.75 or 0.65 or somewhere in there, maybe 0.7. I'll do 0.7. 0.7 sounds fun. So I could do some math here, but I don't really want to do math because I'm an American. So instead, I'm just going to say it's already 0.8 plus 0.7, and then I'll hit enter, and it'll just do the math for me. And that's a good spot for it. Once the character crouches down, that's going to be where his face is. And then I'm also going to go to my gun pivot. They got to move that up as well. And for this one, again, I'm just going to say plus 0.7. All right, there we go. And it'll just do the math for me, where it's going to just figure that out for me, and I don't have to do that. So now I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. And I'm also going to now move the player down, right, because it's got a new sort of central position there. There we go, and I'll save this scene here. And so now I'll go ahead and do a build, and we will see our character. I mean, it's not going to be animating or anything like that yet. Oh, you're right, the title of the show is wrong. It still says part 1. My apologies. I don't know if I can fix that while I'm in the stream. I don't want to stop the stream, so the title's wrong. I apologize. It is part 2 today, not part 1. All right, and so let me just kick this off here, and I will host. Now, obviously, I got a problem here, and client. We'll deal with this in a second. Okay, so now we're seeing the inside of this mesh now, but there we go. I can see there's the server facing the other way. It's kind of hard when it's using your mouse here to to move away from the window without it being seen. And there we go. We're just sort of robot sliding around there. Just cruising, rolling. Got my armpit cannon. Good stuff. All right, so there's that. Let's go ahead and fix some of these other obvious issues. So I have the new body lined up there, and I've got the new camera, and since I was able to see through the visor section, I know it's in the right spot. And so what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to go back to my player. The first-person player doesn't need this soldier mesh, so I'm just going to turn that off. All right, and actually I'm not going to need this animator here either, so I'll just remove that. And on my player, it was toggling the capsule. Now it's saying, hey, there's no capsule anymore. So I'll just drag the soldier onto there, and I will basically just toggle the soldier instead. And so now the first player, the local player, won't see that mesh because it doesn't need it, and the remote player will get that mesh. We'll be able to see the remote player sliding around, and there we go. All right. So yeah, yes, part 3 is tomorrow. Yes, it is. All right. Okay, so yeah, it's really not worth changing. That also reminds me, I again forgot to mention this. I like to mention this at the beginning. All of the assets that I'm using, besides the scripts that I myself am creating, which I will share with you in the descriptions and when this is uploaded and stuff like that, are here in this Merry Fragmas 3.0 assets list on the asset store. I just basically have a variety of options. You can use the stealth stuff. It'll look like last year's with the Ethan character in the stealth arena. Otherwise, I'm using this sci-fi heavy station because I think it looks awesome from Dot Team. And also the sci-fi space soldier. FPS hangar is a good alternative. Also the network lobby stuff we'll use later. And some cinematic effects, some Christmas music, all that stuff. So definitely worth checking out. If you want to know, where that stuff is, I'm going to go window and window here. Whoa. All right, so I have a link to the assets right here. Yeah, right here for now. And then once this is uploaded, the link to the asset store list will be there as well. So cool. Hopefully that doesn't twitch out when I went all picture in picture there, but it doesn't look like it will. Okay. So, sorry, that was a lot of just sort of tangential talking there, but I wanted to make sure I talked about that and covered it again. Let's see. So someone asked, can we use properties with sync var, or is hook mandatory in this case? So sync vars are for simple variables, not really properties and stuff like that. However, you can sync var anything that's serializable, though you may have to write your own serialization methods for it. There's a lot of documentation for it on our website, and again, I can link that or put that in the description when I upload it or whatever. The hook is just much easier for something so simple, but if I really want to do something complex, I certainly could, but I may have to do some more structure or work to make that happen. It would be overkill for this requirement. All right, and so we have our soldier now, and the mesh is set to toggle. So let's go ahead and do some animations. Okay, so if I was doing something like the Ethan character from last year, which is also part of the third person character controller stuff, I could do an animator like this. All right, and so basically this is a simple animation controller, or animator controller, where I have human idle. You know what, if I go full screen with that, I lose my inspector, so I will just do this. There we go. Okay, so where my idle is just the idle animation that's part of the third person controller, the Ethan stuff. I also have humanoid run. Okay, very simple. And then dying, I don't have the animation for this. The death animation is part of the stealth assets, which I don't have loaded in here. But in there's a death animation, or any death animation, or whatever will work. It doesn't really matter. But right now it just says none because I'm not using this animator in this example. And so then I would use some parameters like restart as a trigger, which says, hey, if I'm dead, restart will make me start back to idle. Speed, which will control whether or not I'm running. I'm doing things like speed is greater than 0.01 or less than 0.01. Restart is the trigger here. And then dying, and when I triggered, or died, when I trigger died, then I go to my dying animation, whatever. Real simple. This will basically cause the player to run forward even if they're strafing left and right, or run backwards. So, but I don't have any other animations for that. So, I mean, it's simplistic. It's just a nice way to get started. But I'm going to do something a little bit more complex, a little bit more robust. And I actually don't need to do that. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to right-click in my animations folder, and I'm going to go to Create, Animate Tool or Controller. and I'll call this soldier animations. All right. And I'm going to, again, do something a little bit more complex here. So my parameters, I'm going to have, first off, I'll create a trigger called died, all right? Because I'll need to trigger a death animation. I'll have a trigger called restart, so I know, okay, I've respawned. Let's go back to our default state. And I'm also going to have a float for speed, like we had before, but I'm also going to have another float called strafe for side-to-side motions. And so the main motions of this controller are actually going to be a blend tree. So I'll just right click, create state blend tree. All right. And I'm also going to have a death animation and stuff like that. So I'm going to go ahead, and a nice easy way to find the animations you want is just to go to your project window, and this little shapes button right here, is a filter. I'll just filter for animation clips. And so here's my death animation. Just drop it right on there. And then I'll go inside my blend tree here, and I will say that this is going to be a 2D blend tree. And there are different types of blend trees. So I could do 2D simple, 2D freeform. Cartesian's not really what I want. So this works as 1D is based off one parameter, like run forward, run backwards, don't run. That's one directional things. 2D simple directional are for things like run left, run right, run forward, run back, whatever. 2D freeform is more for things like stand idle, walk forward, walk back, walk left, run, so multi-stage, whatever. Since I don't really have multiple stages, I'm just going to do a 2D simple directional based on speed and strafe. Okay? And I'm going to add some motions here. I can also build off of another blend tree, but I don't need to do that. And I'm going to have 5 animations. All right. And so my 5 animations are going to be rifle aiming idle, rifle walk forward, rifle walk backwards, rifle walk right, and rifle walk left. There we go. And so now I can see sort of a graphing of this here. And since my variables are speed and strafe, I'll say when speed is 0 and strafe is 0, I'm going to be playing the idle animation. When speed is 1 and strafe is 0, I'll be walking forward. When speed is -1 and 0, I'll be walking backwards. When speed is 0 and strafe is 1, I'll be walking right. And when speed is 0 and strafe is -1, I'll be walking left. And so now, if I want to preview this, all right, I can say, okay, let's watch what happens as my speed increases. Well, I walk forward. And it'll actually blend nicely in between. And walk back. What happens if I am moving left or right, left? What if I'm walking forward and left? See, it'll move diagonally, right? So it's just a nice little blend tree to make all that stuff happen there. Okay, so that's my blend tree here, just based off these animations. I'll go back to my base layer now, and I'll say, okay, when do I go into my blend tree? Well, first off, it's my default state, but how do I get back into my blend tree? Well, I'll right-click on any state, make a transition to my blend tree here, and I'm going to do 2 things. First off, the condition for this is going to be my trigger, restart. Also, this is important for any state. I need to go into my settings and say, hey, can this transition to itself? Can I go from being alive to being alive, which will cause it to basically pop as it restarts? I do not want that, so I cannot transition to self. And then from any state to death, and again, I don't want death to be able to transition into death, so not can transition to self, and the trigger is died. And so this is my more complex animation thing here. Now this really has nothing to do with networking right now. This is simply animation, right? We're now going to network this animation, but this in and of itself, nothing to do with animation. That was incorrect. Nothing to do with networking. I said that and then took a drink of water, which made it sound like I was having a dramatic pause. I was not having a dramatic pause. All right. Or maybe I was, but that was not what I intended. Okay, so that is our animator controller for this soldier, for this game here. And so let's take a look at how we're actually going to use it. All right, and I'll make sure to save my scene, always saving my scene, make it a habit. And so now what I'm going to do, I forgot something kind of important here. So a couple things. So first off, for my death and my blend tree, since I'm dealing with a humanoid, I like to do foot IK, which will prevent the feet from slipping so much on the ground in the animations. That's useful. Also, my character controller moves fairly quickly, and these walking animations are fairly slow. I could have done the running animations, but then they wouldn't be aiming their weapon, which I want them to do. So instead, I'm going to say speed is 1.5 on this. That'll speed up the animations. That'll make them track a little bit easier. All right, so that was important. So I want to make sure I mention that. So now that I have that, I'm going to go to my player here. And remember, I removed the animator from soldier because now I'm going to put all the animation stuff up here on player. And even though usually we put the animator on the mesh's top level object here, so normally soldier, if I put it here on player, it'll still find it. It'll still be fine. All right, it'll still animate correctly. All that stuff will be good. All right. So let's see, left, right, inverted. No, left, right, that's correct. It's not inverted. You'll see. It looks inverted because of the way we're looking at it without the context of the floor moving. But I always thought that too, but trust me, yeah, it's fine. Let's see. Any chance of showing how to ragdoll instead of death animation? We could ragdoll instead of death animation. I didn't prepare that, so I mean, not right now. Maybe as a topic some other day. But yeah, I mean, you could just ragdoll. As a matter of fact, one of the cool things about these models of Sci-Fi Soldier is there's actually a ragdoll prefab already made with the colliders and stuff, so it'll accurately ragdoll, which is pretty sweet. But I didn't want to use that because the Ethan doesn't have that, and then so if people following along and they wanted to ragdoll, then maybe they wouldn't be able to. So I just wanted to keep it kind of inclusive. So anyway, so on my player now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to, first off, I've got so many things on here now. I'm going to start collapsing some of this stuff down. All right, and I'm going to add, I could add an animator, but instead I'm going to go to Add Component, Network, and then Network Animator. And so what the Network Animator does is it simply takes an animator that exists, right, and just synchronizes the parameters, right? So I need a valid animator, right, on whatever system, on the clients and on the player and remotes and locals and stuff like that, because it's not synchronizing state or it's not synchronizing transitions. It's simply synchronizing the parameters, and then everyone else's animator needs to handle the state and the transitions and stuff like that. Which is why even though my player, the local player, isn't going to have the soldier mesh or whatever, it's still going to run this animator, the same animator. It's going to control it and let the remotes actually use the data that's coming off of that. And so for the animator here, I'm just going to drag my soldier animations onto there. And for the avatar, I'm going to click this little circle selector here. And there's Ethan avatar for anyone who's using Ethan or whatever other model. But for me, I'm using this soldier avatar. And there we go. Now, the animator, I'm not really sure why it does this, because the network animator requires an animator component. That's why how it automatically added it. It should just automatically add it here, but it doesn't. So I'm just going to click and drag that animator onto there. And it's going to say, okay, which parameters do I want to synchronize? Well, I want to synchronize all of them. Sometimes there may be something that I don't want to synchronize, but in this case, all of them. So there we go. So now all of these parameters will be synchronized when I set them. Now this comes with a caveat. So if I set speed and strafe, they'll be sent across the network just fine. However, triggers are a little bit different. Triggers I can't set through the animator directly. Triggers have to be set through the network animator. There's a technical reason for that. I don't remember what it is, but just know that if I set speed and strafe on my animator, it'll be fine. But if I set a trigger, it won't happen. I have to do that through the network animator. Okay. Let's see here. Someone said, oh, this doesn't seem live. It's live. Sorry. If I missed a question and that's why you think I'm not live, then I do apologize. Anyway, cool. All right, so that is going to be the animation structure. We've got the animator, we've got the network animator. So now let's use it. All right, so we're going to sort of modify some of our scripts here to basically utilize this. And sometimes I like to build bots at this point, and bots will be how I manage my animations and stuff like that. But just so we don't run out of time today, I'm not going to build a bot. I'm just going to go ahead and use the other players for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my scripts folder here, player script. I'm going to crack this bad boy back open. And now, all right, so I'm going to go up to the top here, and I'm going to need a new variable here. This time I'm going to grab my network animator, which I'll call anim. I could get the components of my animator and my network animator and use one for one type of parameter and one for the other type of parameter, but I can actually access my animator from my network animator, so I really only need the one. So network animator, inside start here, I'm just going to say anim equals get component, network animator. There we go, so I have my reference to it. And now, this is another one of those spots where it would be really easy to do this by just going into this first-person controller script and adding the hooks for the network animation stuff. But again, I'm not modifying this just in case it changes in the future. I don't control this script, so I'm leaving that alone. I'm going to write my own code that sits on top of it. Little less efficient, but if it makes the videos last longer, that's what I'm most interested in. And so I'm going to say void update. All right, so now I'm going to use the update method to read my inputs. I'll say, hey, if this isn't the local player, just get out of here. I only care about the inputs of the local player. I'm not interested in the inputs of the remote players. All right. So if I'm the local player, I'm driving my animation, right? So if I'm the local player, I'm going to say anim.animation, or I'm sorry, animator.setFloat. All right, so this is how I access the animator from the network animator, setFloat. And I will set speed equal to input dot get axis vertical, I believe. Yeah, vertical. There we go. So W and S keys, up and down keys, or if I'm using a controller, a joystick, or whatever, that's just going to feed that value into my animator. All right, and then I'll also say anim.animator.setFloat. There we go, and this time strafe. And I will do input.getAxis. This one is horizontal. There we go. All right, so that is going to synchronize. So that's going to basically change speed and strafe on our local animator, which thanks to the network animator will be synchronized across the network. And so now I want to set up, hey, what happens when I die? Well, when I die, all right, so here is my you died, death audio, whatever. I'm also going to say anim, not .animator, because remember, triggers aren't added to the animator. I could, but it wouldn't work. I'm just going to do anim.setTrigger. This is to the networked animator. And that trigger name is died. There we go. By the way, you don't have to use strings. You can use hashes to be more efficient. But again, I'm just doing this for newer programmer understandability. So there's that. And then when I respawn, I'm also going to say anim.setTrigger. Restart. That's going to kick me back into my default state there. Okay. And so that's that, all right? So now I will play a death animation when I die. I'll restart when I restart. Otherwise, I'm going to move around. I'm not doing jumping and stuff like that. I could, but again, I'm just trying to keep this as a simple example here. Let's see. So here's a couple of questions. With the network animator, you cannot specify the rate, interpolation, and all the other stuff. I assume when you say rate, you mean like the rate of transmission. You can control the rate of transmission within Unity itself by going to Edit Project Settings Network, and you can control like your send rates and things like that. Oh, I have that sent way high. It doesn't need to be that high. I don't know why I have that so high. I think I was debugging something. You can turn that way down. It does not need to be at 100. Unless you mean like the rate of animation play or the rate of transitions. In that case, it's all up to how you build your Animator controller. I'm not sure what you mean by rate, but in the interpolation and stuff like that. Let's see. What if we get sluggish animations? Yeah, I think maybe you're talking about how quickly it sends that data across the network. Realistically, there's not a whole lot you can do about that. It's the speed of a network, right? Pay attention though, and this is interesting. A lot of people are concerned about these like rapid, perfect, precise animations. Pay attention to any really like multiplayer game and look at the other players' animations. Chances are they're a much simplified version of your animation system, right? Because you really don't notice that often. It's amazing how much you think, oh man, this was perfect and this was exact. But when you really look, you're like, oh, that is actually a little bit off, or they do kind of rotate weird or something like that. It's actually quite neat to see as sort of a mental exercise. Let's see here. Yeah, so the animations are playing locally. The only thing being sent across is 2 float datas and a trigger, or 2 triggers telling it when to change animation states, but the animations are all local. Local player doesn't play animations. It does, actually. We just don't see them because it doesn't have the mesh. And it does not send animations for the other players to play. It sends just parameters, just 4 variables, and the animator controllers on those players decide what to do with that data. So I can even have different animators and just synchronize these states and let them do whatever they want to do with it, right? So that's all local. Let's see here. Cool. All right. So yeah, I just saw a lot of curiosity about that. I figured I'd address that. So let's go ahead and give this a try. And I'm not certain I applied, so I'm just going to close this, apply, and rebuild, just in case I didn't, because I'm pro like that. All right, player. I don't know if I applied you. I did now. Okay. So let's go ahead and see this in action. All right. So I'll hit play here. I'll turn on this window. So hosts, client. And so I can see my host is now standing in an animation. I'm going to try to do this where I'll be able to see it. There they are. So running, side to side. I mean, jumping still doesn't, I didn't create anything for jumping, but there we go. It's the gun still doesn't look up and down. You know, I'll work on that. But there we go. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and shoot this client now. I wish we could all do that from time to time, right? And then, boom, you died. And what? I didn't see his death animation. Why not? Well, he just disappeared, right? Well, that's problematic. I want to see the death animation. We do all that work. Let's see it. So let's fix this here. I hope my what was convincing. I've been practicing my acting. One thing we want to do is we'll notice that when the player dies, we just immediately turn off all those meshes. And so someone here said it doesn't look like it's using FootIK. It is. Without it, it's actually worse. It's just this particular animation for this particular model, it slips around a bit. I mean, FootIK can only do so much. It's not a perfect solution. So yeah, just be aware of that. So I don't want this mesh to just disappear, right? That's problematic. So let's do this instead. I'm going to go to my scripts folder, and here's another script. I'm not going to write it out because, again, it has nothing to do with networking. It's just a regular mono behavior. But this is my renderer toggler. It's just a script that's going to turn renderers on and off. And so I'm going to have a turn on delay and a turn off delay. All right. And actually, you know what? I changed these. I want my turn on delay to be like 0.1 and my turn off delay to be like 3.5. Just because I'm using different animations now. So basically what this does is when I say, hey, turn off these renderers, it's going to turn them, or it's going to wait 3.5 seconds from when I tell it to actually turn them off. So I can see the death animation, they hit the ground, then they disappear. And then when I say, okay, turn back on, I'm going to wait 1/10 of a second just in case they haven't moved to the correct position yet, right? That way we don't see them moving to their correct position. So it's just a little bit of a delay. In Awake, we're just going to get those renderers. I just say I have a variable, hey, do we want them to be visible on load, which I generally say no. And then I just have this toggle renderers, where it's going to either turn the renderers on or turn them off. And I have this public method change color, which we'll use tomorrow when we want to be able to pass our colors in here. And again, I'll give you these scripts, whatever. And so on my soldier, I'm just going to drop this renderer toggler. And if I do this, then the first person will also have a mesh visible. I don't want that, so I'm leaving this enabled on load off. I just created the option in case for some other time I wanted it, because I like to reuse my scripts. And then, so on my player now, on toggle remote, for soldier, I'm no longer turning it off. Instead, I'm going to go to my render toggler and toggle renderers delayed, right? And so that'll now toggle on and off the renderers, but in a delayed fashion, so I can actually see these animations. So let's build it again, and let's watch it again. Let's see. He looked like he grew on the strafe. I'll take a look at that. Let's see here. Shoot clients? Well, I never. What can I do to what's a better solution than FootIK? FootIK is pretty good. I think it's just an issue with this particular animation. I'd really have to dig into it. I'm not an animator. I'm not an artist. I'd really have to get into like sort of the root motion of this character and see what's going on with that. But it does have some slipping. FootIK will do a decent job, but I mean, if there's tons of it, there's not a whole lot that foot IK is going to do, because foot IK doesn't know if you mean to be moving that foot on the ground, like a sliding animation, or if it's just a whoopsie. Like imagine an animation that's doing the moonwalk, right? Sliding backwards on your feet. Foot IK would just keep you stuck to the ground if it was like absolute. So it's just trying. Let's see here. What's the best way to display ammo? Kind of how we're doing it right now. You know, I'd have the server use a sync var that is your ammo, and that would have a sync var hook to update your UI for what your ammo count is, and that sort of deal. If you wanted to be maybe faster, you could have the player manage their own ammo, but then that opens you up for security. Whatever, I'm getting off topic. Let's see these animations here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. I'm going to host. I'm going to client. All right. And, oh, you know what? And actually, whoops. One thing I forgot to do here. I always, no, I actually didn't forget to hit apply. I forgot to. Now that we have that renderer script, right, that's going to toggle this for us, I no longer need to start with soldier disabled. Otherwise, if it's disabled, that script can't run because it's disabled, right? Whoopsie. There we go. Applied and saved and build. I even got a null reference exception because of that, because it couldn't call the script on a disabled object. Y'all distracted me over there. It's okay. I forgive you. Host, client. All right. By golly, we're going to see this animation now. So, bam, bam, bam. Boop. Boop. Yep. Some slipping. That's going to happen. And he's back. You saw the delay there. Boom, boom, boom. You'll see they spawn in the air there because the spawn points are higher. The spawn points are based off of when the middle was actually in the middle. And so, there we go. Okay. So turn that off there. Hide that window. Close that down. Okay, so we can we add ornament grenades? That'd be kind of fun, like tinsel bombs or something like that. Or tinsel garrote wire. And then like sparkly icicle shrapnel grenades. I don't know. Maybe that's taking a little bit too extreme. We'll see. Let's see. What if we wanted to use hitboxes instead of just the capsule collider? Would we have to create colliders for each bone on the rig? No, you wouldn't have to create. I mean, generally you wouldn't want to synchronize that much data. You just want to get something kind of close. You could write a little bit of script that would synchronize a few primitive colliders to align with the bone structure, and then just synchronize that. That would probably work better. Yeah. So, okay. Let's see here. All right, so we now have the animations working. We got the player falling to their demise and whatever. So really the last thing I want to cover today is the fact that the gun angle isn't great, right? So first off, I'm looking, but you know the gun's not kind of going with it, right? That's a problem. And also, if the other player looks up and down and stuff like that, I can't see where they're looking, which means I don't really know if they're aiming at me or not, and I want to fix that. So here's what I'm going to do. I've got my player here, howdy player, and my player's got the gun pivot and all that stuff. And so I'm going to start off by positioning this pivot where I kind of want their hand to be. And so the easiest way of doing this is if I did it right now and moved it down there, it wouldn't be very accurate. So instead, I'm going to do this while in play mode, while they're actually using their animation. So here, while I'm in play mode, I can see, okay, there's his hand, and this gun pivot's pretty close. I'm just going to move it up a little bit, and into the hand a little bit, and yeah, right about, yeah, there's good. Okay, and so now I have this position where the hand is, and while I'm in play mode, because I know if I leave play mode, that data will be lost, so I'm going to right-click on the transform of the gun pivot here. I'm going to copy it. Now I'll leave play mode, and I will paste it. So now I have that value. So that's going to position the pivot right where the hand is. In this instance, with the way this model works in this candy cane here, I want it to pivot on the right hand, right? So it's kind of like using his left hand to aim up and down and basing with the right hand. If it had a stock or some other pivoting mechanic, obviously I'd do something a little bit different. It just really depends on the model and the animation and stuff. So that's my pivot, but now I also want to get the gun in about the right position here. So again, I want to do this in play mode, so I'll hit play. And now I'm not moving the gun pivot anymore. That's where I want it to be. However, I am moving the candy cane model, and I'm going to move that maybe over a little bit, down a little bit. I just want to kind of get it into their hands. You know, obviously the hands are going to clip through a bit. That's fine. We're going to fix all of that stuff, right? So, you know, something like that is pretty good. And again, I'm just going to right-click, copy that component, exit, right click, paste those values. All right. So there we go. So now we've got the candy cane in relatively the position that we're going to want. Now that works for this model because the gun in the model's hands, it will also work for our first person, our local player. If something about the model is so extremely different so that the gun wouldn't be visible or whatever, I could always just have two guns, my first person gun and my local player gun and my remote player gun, but that would require a lot more code to like synchronize them and make sure that all their effects were working. And again, I was keeping it simple here, right? So I mean, I don't have to make the one gun work for all solutions here. I could just have two guns and turn one on and the other one off or whatever, but that's just how I'm making it work here. So let's see here. So someone asked, can you show the UI fader script? Not right now. It's not really networking relevant, but I will post it, so you'll be able to see it. Is it slipping because I'm not applying root motion? I don't want root motion. Root motion will actually try to move my model. And remember, my model is being synchronized over a network, so root motion equals bad. Without root motion, yeah, you're going to have some slipping. That's just kind of the nature of it. However, you know, again, I challenge you, look at a lot of games that are out, you'll notice a little bit of slipping too, less because there's a lot of work and refinement, and I'm just sort of slapping some models and animations in here without really thinking about it. But it does happen, and there are some things you can do to fix that. But like I said, I'm no animator. I'm sure there's other great solutions, and I'm sure I don't know what they are because I'm a programmer and I don't know that much about it. So we use what we have, right? But yeah, if anyone's an animator and wants to ping me afterwards and be like, well, here's the perfect solution for you, I'll be happy to talk about it tomorrow. Okay, so we've got the gun positioned kind of where we want here. And so now I'm going to create a new script that is going to allow me to synchronize all of this stuff. All right, so I'm going to go to my scripts, right click, create C# script, gun position sync. Okay, and let's go ahead and crack this baby open and take a look inside. So first things first, I'm going to go ahead, I don't need these two things there, and I'm going to be using Unity Engine .networking. There we go. This is going to be a network behavior. There we go. And there's going to be quite a few things I need right off the bat. So, because remember, this script is going to work for both remotes and locals, right? And so what I'm going to do is, someone said, watch out, he may invoke Christmas on you. Yes, indeed. I kind of look like Santa Claus. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a serialized field. And so the first thing I'm going to need is a transform that says, okay, where is my camera? All right? Camera transform. So if I'm the local player, I'm just going to attach the gun to the camera, and that'll be that. Easy peasy, right? And then I'll just synchronize the pitch of it across the network. Now, if I'm not the local player, then I've got to do quite a bit more work. So serialized field transform. All right, and so this is going to be my hand mount. So for my remote players, where am I basing the position of my gun off of? And for me, that's going to be the hand mount. And then finally here, serialized field transform gun pivot. So where is my gun? What am I moving around? So that's the gun pivot there. I'm also going to serialize field, say float, and I'm going to create a variable called threshold. All right. So threshold is kind of important. I don't want to synchronize the position and the pitch of this gun every frame all the time, even if it doesn't move. That's just chewing up bandwidth and I'm gaining nothing for it. So I'm creating an angle threshold. If the gun has moved less than 10 degrees since the last sync, right, don't sync it. All right, only if it's moved more, which will cause my gun to be a little incorrect by, a factor of as much as 10 degrees. But you know what? Really not a big deal. 10 degrees at a distance when you're playing a fast-paced game, no one will notice. And if they do notice, just reduce your threshold, right? I'm also going to have serialized field, float, smoothing. So I'm going to end up lerping some stuff here, and smoothing is just going to be how much I'm going to smooth that lerping motion. All right. Next, I'm going to have a sync var, and that sync var is going to be float pitch, so the pitch of my camera or of my gun, so I can synchronize that across the system. I'm not going to use a sync var hook, and I'll talk about why here in a little bit. I'm also going to need a vector 3, which is going to be my last offset. All right, and I'll explain why I need that in a moment. And then a float last synced pitch. So the last time I synchronized a pitch, what was it? That way I know if I'm 10 degrees off from it. Okay. All right, so these are the variables we're going to need here. And so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do void start. And I'm going to say if this is the local player. All right, if this is the local player, then first off, gunPivot.parent, all right, equals camera transform. Just parent it to the camera. Nice and easy, right? And so if I just run this here real quick, and we take a quick look at what happens, I'll go to my player here, and I will drop down some of this stuff. Gun position sync. It says, okay, what's my camera transform? Well, my camera transform is my first person character there. Where's my gun pivot? Well, this is my gun pivot. I'll mess with hand mount later. Hit apply, hit save, run it, host, and there we go. Right, so now it moves. I could have a little offset for head bobbing to make it a little more realistic, but you know what, that's going to do the trick for now, right? And I'm just looking around. Now this isn't synchronized or anything like that, this is purely local. Also worth noting that if you happen to notice like some clipping occur, you can go to your first person character and you can actually reduce down the clipping plane. I actually have already done this. I meant to not have already done this because it's normally like 0.3, and when it's 0.3, it actually clips quite a good deal. I must have just changed that at some other time. Well, apparently right now it doesn't. But normally it clips quite a good deal, so I always just like to reduce that down to its minimum, just to prevent any clipping on your first-person character controller. All right. So that is the simple way to synchronize your local player stuff, but what about the remote stuff? So I'm going to say else, okay, if you're not the remote, or if you're not the local player, then I'm going to say the last offset, I'm going to record, all right? I'm going to record the difference in position from the hand mount and the actual player game object. Because what's happening is I don't really have to do this. I can just synchronize the position, everything's fine. But what you'll notice is the gun stays perfectly still while the soldier or the model idles, kind of bobbing back and forth, which looks really weird. It's almost like they're on some form of stabilizer where the gun is perfectly steady even though everything around it is bouncing and moving around. So what I'm going to do is every frame, I'm just going to say, okay, what's the difference between, like, how much is this player bobbing? And I'm going to move the gun by that amount as well, and it looks much more organic. So this last offset is going to equal the hand mount dot position minus transform dot position. So how much has that player moved around? Okay. Now, inside update, I'm going to do two things. So void update. I'm going to do two things. If I'm the local player, I need to make sure that I'm synchronizing, I'm updating pitch so that all of the remote versions of me will also update. And if I'm the remote player, I need to actually update my pitch or update the actual position, right? So I'm going to say if is local player. Okay, so I am the local player. I'm going to say pitch, not prop, pitch equals camera transform dot local rotation. I need this local rotation dot Euler angles, because that is otherwise in quaternions. That's how you spell Euler, by the way. It looks like Euler. It's Euler. Euler angles dot x. That's going to give me the x rotation right along about the x-axis, so up and down, of this guy's head, right, or of the camera. So that's going to be my new pitch. And then I need to know, okay, is it greater than my threshold? So I'm going to say if math f dot abs, absolute value, equals last synced pitch minus pitch. All right, so that's going to take any negative or positive number and just make sure it's a positive number. So how much have I moved since my last synchronized pitch? And I'm going to say if that is greater than or equal to my threshold, then I have moved enough and I need to synchronize it. All right, now I don't have a command yet to synchronize it because remember, the local player, no matter what, even though they have local authority and all that, they can't update sync vars. Only the server can. So I'm going to need a command for that. And then after I send that command, I'm going to say last synced pitch equals this pitch. So I now know the last time I synchronized. I'm going to hop out of update now. I'm just going to write this command real quick because the command's simple. So command, and my command will be void cmd update pitch. CMD, OMG. Float, I don't know why I said that. Sometimes my brain works faster than, or my mouth works faster than my brain. Pitch is going to equal new pitch. There we go. All right, it's simplistic, but only the server can update pitch. So I have to say, hey server, this is what I want you to be. Update it, please. And it will then update it. So there we go. And so now back in update, I have a command now. So I'll say cmd update pitch, and I will pass in this new pitch. There we go. And it'll update across the board. All right. So that's what I do if I'm local. Now, if I'm remote, I hate what this is about to do to my formatting. There's a setting somewhere to fix that. I'm always too lazy to look it up, and every time I update, it goes back to the way it was. So maybe it's just telling me something there. All right, so else. All right, so if we're remote, we need to get the rotation we're going to need from this pitch. So I'm going to say quaternion new rotation equals quaternion. I always like to say, for those of you who are like, what the heck is a quaternion? Quaternion is just a way of storing rotations as opposed to Euler angles that aren't subject to gimbal lock, right? I like to say that there's two types of people in this world, people that don't understand quaternions and liars. Yeah, I know some people understand them, but they're kind of weird when you're uninitiated, right? So quaternion new rotation equals quaternion Euler, and so I'm going to pass in some Euler angles, so pitch 0, 0, because I'm only rotating about the x-axis. By the way, this is why we made that gun pivot, right? Because otherwise the gun pivot, without the gun pivot, that candy cane, since it was rotated, would actually rotate about the z-axis, and I'd have to convert from x-axis on one to z-axis on the other, and it would get kind of weird. And so by doing this, by having that gun pivot, it's all streamlined. It's all the same angles. I don't have to worry about that. Let's see here. So some people are saying, I don't like curly brackets under. I do. It spaces it out and makes it easier for learners to read. And you have to remember that everything I do is for you. They wrote a song about that. Everything I do is for the learners, so it makes it easier for them to see it. It's not as cluttered, and so that's what I do. Otherwise, I've just gotten so used to it. Anyway, off topic again. Quit it. You guys are distracting me. I do love Notepad++. Anyway, all right. I'm done being off topic. Okay, so let's... someone else said, is this pre-recorded? No, it's live. All right, you guys are distracting me. Okay, so we've got our quaternion new rotation there, and then vector 3 equals current offset. So I'm creating a current offset, and that is going to equal basically what I did up here. So how far am I off from the player, or for the base object now? Okay, so that's my current offset. And this code, again, is just for the bobbing portion. If I didn't need that, I wouldn't need this code. And so I'm going to say gun pivot dot local position. The local position part is necessary. I can't just do position. It has to be local. Plus equals current offset minus last offset. Right? So how much has the player's body, has the mesh bobbed and moved away from the player base object? And I'm going to move my gun by that amount. And then I'm just going to say the last offset is now equal to the current offset. So I'm just going to record that position, so that next frame I can do it all over again. So this is just the bobbing and weaving code. So now I'm just going to actually apply this rotation. I don't know why I calculated it up here and then apply it down here. That's kind of a whoopsie on my part. But I'm going to say gun pivot dot local rotation. Okay, my local rotation, again, that's important. How am I rotated when compared to my parent object? All right, and I don't want to just set this rotation. If I wanted to just set the rotation up at my sync var, I could just define a hook and just set the rotation there. But if I did that, the gun would just snap one angle to the next angle. I want to smoothly, I want to interpolate it. So that's why I have to do it inside update here. So I'm going to do quaternion.lerp. Let's lerp between some quaternions. My current is gun pivot dot local rotation. Where do I want to go? Well, I want to go to new rotation, that one I calculated up here. And how am I going to get there? I'm going to get there by using time.delta time times smoothing. And I know this is a long one. Let me make it 2 lines like that. There we go. So there we go. And so now I will smoothly lerp my gun pivot. I'll make it bob with the character, and that is going to work. And that's a lot of code for something that's basically cosmetic, but this is the cosmetic day, so cosmetics for everybody. I am slowly getting over time, but I am... Someone said, I bet he just says that during recording to mess with people. No, I'm live. Stop it. Or did I want you to think that? Okay, so I'm running out of time here. Quit distracting me. Got my gun position sync. I have updated this here, and so now let's go ahead and make this work. So my hand mount, right, if I look at this model, I could, so here's soldier, biped, I could just move my way up the rigging, spine, not right clavicle for right hand, upper arm, forearm, hand. So the modeler actually created a weapon mount here. And normally this would work, and actually this model comes with a weapon and stuff like that. However, I'm actually going to use IK, I'm going to use inverse kinematics to make the character's hands track to the weapon. And so while you may normally think, oh, the weapon mount, that's what I want to attach the weapon to, in this instance I don't, because if the weapon is positioning itself off the hand and the hand is positioning itself off the weapon, you get this really unstable relationship which causes the character's hand or arm to just go wild, right? And so since I'm using IK, I want to go to the first part of the rig that won't be affected by this IK. So I'm going to use a right arm and left arm IK, and so the first part unaffected by IK will be this right clavicle. So even though it's named a little weird, this is going to be my hand mount. This is what I'm going to be basing my motion off of. And so for my player, where it says hand mount, that's going to be this right clavicle. Okay? And now I'm going to hit apply, save that, and let's take a look. All right, so we'll do a build. Now I don't have the IK in yet. I'm basically just looking at the pitch synchronization. I'm stuttering now. This is how it begins. This is how you slowly slip. All right, so I'm going to host. I'm going to client. And it's always fun to try to get to a point where I can see both screens. All right, can you see me? There we are. No, my hand positions are wrong. Ignore those. But, whoop, whoop. Armpit cannon, raining death and destruction. And see, you see the particle effects on the local and the remote. Whee. Okay, that's enough of that. All right. So we've got the pitch synchronizing now, so let's do some IK. Alrighty. So this last bit isn't really network specific, but we're going to do it anyway because it's necessary. And so I'm going to come to my gun position here, gun position sync, and I'm going to need a couple new transforms here. So I'm going to say serialize field transform. I'm going to say right hand hold. Okay, where my right hand goes. Serialize field transform left hand hold. All right, and then I'm going to have a new thing here, animator. So not a network animator. I'm not interested in that. I just need the animator. I'm just basically I need access to the avatar, right? And so I'm this isn't networked animation stuff. This is going to happen locally based off of this pitch. So inside start now, there's all my is local and all that whatever. But even if I'm not local, I'm going to say anim equals get component animator. There we go. So I'm just going to get a reference to that. And then I'm going to come down to the very, very bottom. I'm going to create a new method. This is a Unity callback. It's going to be void on animator IK. So on inverse kinematics. And first off, I'm going to say, hey, if I somehow don't have an animator, just return. This is useful in case I haven't turned the animator on or something, or I'm synchronizing some position or whatever. It prevents it from throwing errors. All right, so I'm only going to attempt to use it if I actually have an animator. Alrighty, and now I'm going to go ahead and start doing the IK stuff. IK, of course, stands for inverse kinematics. Normally we use forward kinematics, where motion is calculated from the root node out to the extremities of a mesh, and inverse kinematic just means we start with positioning on the extremities and move our way inwards towards the root, which is what I'm using. And I don't have to do like full transform inverse kinematics because this is a humanoid, Unity is amazing, and so all I can just do is reference the humanoid avatar, right arm, left arm, right? So it's pretty sweet. So I'm going to say anim, right, set IK position weight. So I need to say, okay, how much do I want my IK to affect this? All right, if I put a very small number in here, then my hand will only sort of move to where I want it to be. So I don't want that, and so I'm going to say avatar IK goal is an enumerator here, or an enum, right? Right hand. So I'm setting the weight for the right hand, and I'm setting that to 1. All right. So that is the weight of my right hand, and then I will say anim.set IK rotation weight, and again avatar IK goal dot right hand. Can't wait to be able to copy paste this for the next part. Okay, and so that's setting the weights for my right hand. And now I'm going to say anim dot set IK position. Right, so okay, I know the weight. What am I trying to reach? And again, avatar IK goal, right hand. Okay, so the right hand is what I'm trying to position. And I've got right hand hold is that transform I have dot position. That's where I'm going with it. All right, and now I'm just going to copy this, paste it, and I'm set IK rotation. There we go. And it's going to be avatar IK goal right hand hold dot rotation. All right, that's my right hand. And now, the nice and easy, copy paste. And now let's just do left hand. Left foot. That would be a weird result there. Okay, left hand hold, and left hand hold. All right, so right hand, left. Cool. Okay, so we have our positions and our weights. There we go. This script is updated, and so now I just need to define what that all means. All right, so I'm gonna come back here to my player, and now it says right hand hold, left hand hold. Well, I need those, so I'm gonna go to my gun pivot, and I'm gonna right click on it, create an empty, which I will call right hand hold. And I will create another empty called left hand hold. There we go. And on the player script, my right hand hold is my right hand hold. Left is left. There we go. Applies all around. And so if I hit play right now, it's not going to work. This is one of those things everyone's like, why isn't this working? What the heck is happening, right? Here's the key to this. I got to go back to my animator, right? So my soldier animator controller here. And I need to go to my layers. And for my base layer, or whatever layer, I need to click this little flower cog thingy. And I need to tell it, hey, I'm interested in doing IK. Turn IK on. And then I'll see IK appear here. And now it's going to do that. So let's figure out our positions. So I'll hit play. I got to do this all in play mode. So now his hands are going to be like all sorts of weird, right? So let's go ahead and do our right hand first. So, yep, raise your right hand. Okay, so right hand first. Let's get some of our rotations. This is always kind of fun. Whoop. Oops, right hand hold. There you are. All right, so he's holding his own hand. How cute. Let's just get some positioning here. There we go. It's not going to be perfect. This model is not made to be holding a candy cane. I know it's kind of an oversight on the original modeler. I don't know how they didn't think of that, but so I'm just going to get it close. There we go. And again, I'm going to leave play mode. I'm going to lose this. So I'm going to copy those copy that component. Now paste those values. Save it. Let's do left hand. All right. Left hand hold. There we go. Here we go. No. No. Don't be weird. There we go. All right. Straight thugging now. How are we doing there? That's not bad. I mean, you can get as perfectionist about it as you want. The fact of the matter is, it wasn't really made for this, so the fingers will always clip a little bit. There we go. Close enough for first-person shooters, I say. All right, so I will copy that component, leave play mode, paste that component. There we go. So now we have our IK. So I'll go ahead and save that. Let's see here. I'm just reading chat real quick. Let's see. So yeah, agreed when dead. So someone said, can you add some info about multiplayer third-person orbit cam tomorrow during session? Agreed when death, wait for key press to show overview cam. I mean, it kind of shows an overview cam now, the original camera. If we have time, I'm not sure we'll have time for that. I have some other stuff planned, and that might take up most of the time. Is this using an IK plugin, or does Unity have a built-in IK system? Yeah, absolutely. So no, I'm not using a plugin. This is all Unity's built-in IK stuff, which is actually really powerful. So definitely check it out. Let's see here. Is there a quick and easy way to swap out the models for the players? Sure. I mean, you can switch out the meshes. You might have to change like IK positions and stuff like that. But if you store all that data in like say scriptable objects, and then you could just swap them out, just the scriptable object that stores all the data for your different configurations at runtime, that would work pretty easily. Let's see here. Someone said you could just have multiple models as children and enable them, disable them. Yeah, you'd have a hard time retargeting the animations. You'd have to swap the avatars at real time, which might cause it to be a little buggy. So maybe, maybe not, unless they're all based off the same avatar. Yeah, so was that change avatar via script? Let's see. Okay, all right. So that was, most of the questions were about that. So, all right, I have this. Let's see it in action. We'll do our builds. Okay. There we go. Perfect. And I'm actually trying to show you this. If you look here, you'll notice my UI text is black and not red like it's supposed to be, right? So this is actually not a bug, and I want to point this out. So what happened is, because this is something that people get from time to time and they wonder about it, is if I do a build, right? And now it sort of sticks for a second there. I gotta cause it to repaint somehow. If I do a build, oh no, don't be like that. And then while it's building, I'm quickly spamming the play button. Then basically, it's gonna freeze the UI before it has a chance to render the font color. And then I've got to basically, if I close it, reopen it, or whatever, or just make it repaint. There we go. Now it's fine again. Right? So basically, once I do a build, I just want to make sure that I wait for the screen to refresh, it to come back from its build process before I spam the play button, or else my UI can get a little weird. All right? That's just, it's normal. It doesn't happen in builds. It only happens, basically, it only happens in editor while I'm doing this. So that was a little tidbit for you there. So now that it's back, I'll now hit play. And I will go here. I'll do a client. Did I just do 2 clients? I think I did. Oh, no, I didn't. Okay, perfect. All right. And so there's my server coming at me there. And if I look at his hands, yeah, that's right. Now, of course, I don't have any like real like limitations there. I look down far enough. You know, I really want to limit how far up and down I can look, or just maybe make the hand slide a bit. I could also have animations for certain angles, right? And just IK within those animations, so they could look a little bit more realistic. As a matter of fact, I can make the arm bend at the elbow a little bit better and like kind of hoist the gun up and down. But this, again, simple solution, right? Just to get us to something workable. And then take that, you die, the gun disappears, falls to the ground. I could make the gun not disappear. I could make the gun just sort of parent. You also saw it do this little weird flicker thing. That happens when I show it too quickly before it's finalized its last position. If that's happening, it might mean that I just need to turn up the delay on the showing the mesh again, or have a callback for, okay, they've respawned, now let's go ahead and show them again, or something along that line. Also, maybe just a respawn effect will fix that as well. You know, again, just simple solutions here. I could turn off IK and just let him hold the gun as he falls and whatever, and that would look pretty cool as well. But those are just different options for different visual effects. It's really kind of based on what you want to do with it. Alrighty, so at this point, that is the content I wanted to cover for today. So that's all the graphical stuff. So we added the UI, we added the meshes, we synchronized the animations, we did some IK to sync the gun positions with the hands and all that stuff. And it's looking pretty good. Now tomorrow, what we're going to do is we're going to add lobbies. We're going to give the player the ability to have to add their own name, to add their player colors and things like that, and synchronize those across the network. We're going to look at bots, and we're going to look at maybe just a couple of other advanced networking topics there, or maybe intermediate. I don't want to say advanced and have someone later be like, well, that wasn't that advanced. But some other topics there, right? And so that's going to sort of wrap it up for today. As always, I'd like to point out, if you have questions, comments, concerns, feel free to follow us on Twitter at Unity3D, at The Ant Ranch, at Matt Mirrorfish, at Wool Goldstone, and at Mike Geig, which is me. This has been Merry Fragmas 3.0, Day 2, Part 2. Tomorrow we'll have Part 3. I will stick around and answer some questions, but for those of you who are taking off now, I appreciate you taking the time, and thank you very much.